Hi, I'm Ben, the Burnt Out Chef, and today we're going to be making my amazing chocolate fudge cake. So, let's get started. So first, in a bowl, 350 grams of unsalted butter that's been softened, and 350 grams of soft light brown sugar, and give them a good beating together. You want them to be nice and creamy. This will probably take 3 to 5 minutes depending on the power of your whisk. Definitely do it with electric. Give the bowl a scrape down. You'll want to do this a few times while you're whisking, or else you'll be whisking nothing. There you can see it's nice and creamy. A bit more though. Another scrape down. And now we're going to start adding the eggs. 6 in total. We'll crack them in one at a time and beat each one in individually. If it starts to really curdle, just put a little bit of the flour in. There you go, another egg. Gotta do it a bit faster now. Because I'm going quite in detail in this video just to try that, because most of the video's been short from before. So it is going to be a longer video, so we need to get through the eggs. There we are, now all the eggs are in. Give it a quick mix as well, just make sure it's all thoroughly combined. And now we're going to sift in 100 grams of cocoa powder. Make sure it's all sifted, you don't want any lumps. $10 grams of baking powder, also sifted. This can get quite hard in the tub, so you want to make sure it's sifted. And just to start off with, gently fold it with your spatula. Otherwise, because it's so fine, it'll go everywhere. Now, 250 grams of self-raising flour. Sifted again, you don't want any lumps. And again, mix this by hand a bit first, or it'll just go everywhere with the electric mixer. You may notice I don't have a fancy KitchenAid. This one I have is about 30 years old. It still works. You don't need anything fancy. Now just give it a good whisk together. Make it all totally combined. And there we are, a lovely cake batter. It is quite thick. So, now we're going to be lining 2 7-inch or 18cm cake tins. First, we'll draw a circle around the base. Again, there's 2, so we're going to do it twice. Cut the piece of baking paper off to a more manageable size. Then quickly cut around the circle using the inside of the line. If you use the outside, it'll be too big, especially with a thicker marker. So yeah, do the second one. Oh yeah. Now we're going to measure the depth just using the pen of the tin. Mark it on some more baking paper, and then use that line and cut along it. You will need probably more than you think, so this section of baking paper I actually cut 3 strips, one of which I then cut in half. So basically each tin had 1.5 of these strips. I think they're about 30 to 40 centimetres, so a foot to a foot and a bit. So now we're going to grease the inside of the tins, the base and the sides, all over using a scrap of baking paper. Make sure you use a decent amount, but not too much, or it'll be horrible. And I'm going to put our circles in the bottom. You can actually buy pre-made circles, but I don't see much point. And now we're going to add the little strips in around the sides. These are technically non-stick tins, but I don't trust it. And then we're going to add the little half sections of the other strip we cut. And there we are, that's one tin nicely lined. You don't want any big creases in it, or you'll get a crease in your cake, and it'll look a bit rubbish. Especially if you're using this recipe to do like a naked cake or something. Now, I'm going to spoon our batter in. Just spoon 1 spoonful into each tin at a time, and divide it equally. This method, you'll get it pretty much bang on every time. Some people do it by weight, but there's no point really. As long as you're getting equal sized scoops each time, it's fine. And there we are. Now we're going to spread it out as flat as you can, but you want to leave a bit of a divot in the middle because the middle will rise more than the rest of the cake. And even if you do leave a divot, it will still rise more, but a lot less than it would if you had it perfectly flat, or if it was a bit of a mound in the middle. Now, bang it down about 3 times per cake, nice and firm, but not enough to like damage your counter. And there we are. You can see it's sort of tapered into the middle. So now, these are going to go into a 160 degrees Celsius oven for about 45 minutes. That's on convection or fan, it's the same. But now, we're going to get onto the fudge icing. So, to a large pan, we're going to add 40 grams of cocoa powder, about 1 gram of salt, about 2 grams of vanilla extract, 150 grams of dark chocolate, and a whole tin of sweetened condensed milk. That's 397 grams, oddly specific. Make sure you get it all out because it is quite thick. It's quite nice actually. Right, so we're going to take this to the hob. Now, we're going to keep it on medium to low heat. We just want to melt the chocolate. Constantly mixing, it'll take 5 to 10 minutes. You want to keep it as cool as possible because the hotter you get it, the longer it's going to take to cool back down because it has to be cold before you can use it. So there we go, it's nice and lump-free. So now while that's cooling down, we're going to check our cakes. So you can see when you touch the top, it springs back. And also when you insert a skewer, it comes out clean. Now these tins are very, very hot. So use an oven glove. So this is the safest way to take them out of the tin. So you flip it like that while holding the tin and the cooling rack, then lift the tin off. And using the oven glove again, you take the paper off and then use the oven glove to take the base off it, and then you carefully peel the rest of the paper off. Some people say to not leave the paper for like 20 minutes or something, but it doesn't make any difference. It just cools down faster if you take it off. So now we're going to put another cooling rack on it to flip it right side up. And you did see that I just grabbed the tin bare-handed. That's because I have pretty much heat-resistant hands from being a chef. And yeah, I just did that bare-handed. It is quite hot. It's about probably 100 degrees. And yeah, take the paper off, then take the base off. That is very hot. And then take the rest of the paper off. And this one, because I don't have another cooling rack, I'm just going to carefully flip it with my hand again. This cake is about 100 degrees, so it's quite hot. And there we are, 2 cakes ready to cool down. You want to give these probably an hour or 2 to cool. You really want them to be properly cold. So now, we're going to add 230 grams of softened butter to a bowl and add in our mixture from before, from the pan. This is going to be very thick now because it's fully cold. It's room temperature. So now, we're going to whisk our butter up before we put the stuff from the pan in. I like to give it a mash first, and then using the electric whisk, give it a really good whisk. It'll take about 5 minutes. If you do it by hand, which I very much recommend against, you'll be there for probably 20 minutes. Give it a scrape down. Give it another whisk. Again, it's about 5 minutes in total, and you'll see a massive colour change from the yellow before to this pretty much white now. That's still not quite enough, so I'm going to go a bit more. Again, this is edited down. There we are, it's nice and white. If you touch it, it'll actually feel like a mousse. Almost. There we are, give it a scrape. And now, it's time to add in our chocolate mixture. So, this is going to be, like I said, very thick. It's actually reasonably hard to get out of the pan. But get it all into the bowl. Again, you need to be fully cold or it'll just melt the butter and ruin it. Then you'll have to start again from scratch. And there we are. Just get the whisk and whisk it up again. Again, don't do this by hand, use an electric whisk. Because it's that thick it'll break your arm off. This recipe is sort of taken off the traditional Eastern European kind of buttercream. The part that's meat is adding the chocolate to it and melting the chocolate in. I think they use it as like a pastry filling, and it's literally just condensed milk and butter. But there we are, there's our nice icing. So, I'm gonna put it into a bag. I like these nice big, I think they're 21-inch Savoy piping bags, because they're really easy to fill. They make smaller 18-inch ones, but they're awkward to fill. They're okay if you're doing like small amounts of sauces as a thing, but I'd rarely do that. So I'm just gonna scrape it all in. And it'll take a bit again because it's quite thick. And once you've got it all in, again, you don't want to waste any of this because you've spent probably about a good hour to make this, including the cooling time. I'm going to shake it down to as much as we can, and then holding it really tightly at the end, making sure that you've not put a hole in the end, give it a spin around like that. The centrifugal force will force all of the icing to the end, and it won't leave you an air gap at the end. So now I'm going to scrape the last of it up there, like that. Then we're going to tie it off in a knot. This will want to be refrigerated for probably 30 minutes at least. But if you go over an hour, you'll want to give it sort of a massage in the pan and maybe leave it out for 5 minutes before you try and pipe with it, or it'll be too thick. So now, we're going to cut up our cakes. So first, I'm going to carefully cut up the top. Use the sharpest knife you have, as long as it's serrated, and cut as level as you can. You can always take multiple cuts. Okay, I'm here. Because the top had a crack in it, it was a bit awkward. So just get it as flat and smooth as you can, without taking too much off, obviously. I like to leave the top to have a little curve on it, it just makes it easier to ice at the end. Now look at it from different angles to make sure it's all flat and level. You can get special cake cutting tools, but as long as you're careful, you can do it with a bread knife, as long as it's decently sharp. Now, put it on its end. This is why you have to have it properly cool. And slice it down the middle. Again, be careful, take it slow. Make sure you're keeping it level in half. So you get 2 evenly sized pieces. And make sure you keep these 2 pieces together. You don't want to mix them because sometimes tins have a little difference and you don't want it being like stepped. Unless I eat a cake, it'll make it awkward to ice. So now, let's do the same to the other one. Take the top off. And then cut it in half. Just be really careful, take it slow. It's not a recipe I'd recommend rushing. So there we are, half. So now it's decorating time. So I'm going to use this little nice marble effect cake board. Put a little dollop of the icing on. Don't use too much because the recipe uses the entire amount of icing. Smear it down a bit and put your first one on. Make sure it's centered and give it a little squeeze in. the icing will just help hold it in place. Now, put about 2 circles worth of icing on it. Again, you want enough. This is actually a bit too much, I actually ended up taking some off. But you don't want too much because it'll make the cake unstable, but you'll also run out of icing. And there we go, a nice sort of maybe 3-4 mil thick layer. And now we're going to add some white and milk chocolate chunks into it. Don't want too many or it won't stick, but a few is really good. Adds a bit more texture to it. And don't tell me when you put them, it's a little surprise. You can see that's the bit that I took off before. So now I'm just going to repeat it for the rest of the layers. Again, take your time. Make sure it's smooth. Add your next layer, then realise you've forgotten to put your chocolate chunks in. Take it back off. Add your chocolate chunks in. Add your layer back on. Another bit of icing. Smear it down. Spread it nice and smooth. Add your chocolate chunks this time, first time. And then add on your last layer. Give it a good squish down, but try and keep it level. You can adjust it a little bit at this point. Now you want to put a good thick layer of icing on the top, because you'll need some more for the decoration on the top. And then on the sides, try and get it into the any gaps between the layers. And then just sort of try and evenly-ish put it on. The more even you get it, the easier it'll be later. Then shove the rest of it on the top. And then spin it and smooth it out as best you can. Make sure you cover all the bare patches of cake. If the icing starts getting really soft, just put it in the fridge for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes. And now, it's getting quite smooth, so make sure everything's covered. And now, we're just going to put it back into the fridge for maybe 20 minutes, so it's firm when we do the decoration. Let's give it a nice smooth out. Make sure the top layer is a bit thicker than the rest. There we go, off to the fridge. So now it's back out of the fridge. What we're going to do, using the end of our palette knife, you can probably do this at spoon as well. First, make sure it's perfectly smooth, and then starting in the middle, I'm going to do a little spiral. This spiral, I'm going to go all the way around the top, down the edge, and all the way down the side. If you mess it up, smooth it back out, fridge it for another 20 minutes, and try again. You can basically keep doing it until you get it right. As long as you don't take like a week, or it'll go out of date. But yeah, it's pretty easy. As you can see, it doesn't have to be perfect. But there we are, it looks great. So now, slicing time. This is when we get to see the nice cross section. I think it's the first proper cross section on the channel. It's gonna be good. And there we have it, our 4-layer chocolate fudge cake. Now it isn't a hot chocolate fudge cake, it's a chocolate fudge cake. There we go. Now it's taste test time. Best time, especially when it's cake. So, get a nice bite out of here. Very carefully. And yeah, it's so delicious, so moist, just perfectly balanced. Now I'm going to go and eat the rest of this. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, it really helps me out. Bye!